Nigel Farage slams public sector pensions as a Ponzi scheme and demands immediate reform. Nigel Farage, the former leader of the UK Independence Party, UKIP, and prominent political commentator, has reignited the debate surrounding public sector pensions, describing the system as a Ponzi scheme. Farage has called for an overhaul of the current system, arguing that it places an unsustainable financial burden on taxpayers and creates deep inequalities between public and private sector workers. His statements have sparked widespread discussion, with supporters championing the need for reform while critics warn against undermining the commitments made to public servants. The Reform UK leader warned public pensions are the biggest ticking time bomb in government finances, slammed what he termed a pensions apartheid. Nigel Farage has demanded stringent measures against what he called public sector pension Ponzi schemes following revelations that council tax revenue is heavily financing staff retirement funds. The outspoken politician labeled the favourable public pensions as the biggest ticking time bomb within government finances, condemning the stark contrast with private sector pensions as pensions apartheid. The Reform UK leader is calling on the government to debt the issue, which he claims has been continually overlooked by successive governments. His comments come in the wake of new statistics showing that last year, £1 out of every £4 earned in council tax went towards local government pension schemes. The Reform UK leader is calling on the government to debt the issue, which he claims has been continually overlooked by successive governments. His comments come in the wake of new statistics showing that last year, £1 out of every £4 earned in council tax went towards local government pension schemes. Farage told The Telegraph, "Public sector pensions are the single biggest ticking bomb in our government finances. It's a massive, massive problem. We can talk about GDP and the national debt, but none of that includes any guesstimates as to what that will cost us in pension payments in 15 to 20 years' time. We now have pensions apartheid between the private sector and public sector. There is a massive, massive gulf. They're Ponzi schemes, all of them. We have to address it, we have to deal with it, but to date, nobody has. By turning a blind eye for decades, we've given ourselves a massive problem. The country is going to need a lot of growth in the next few years if we're going to have a chance of dealing with it. To start with, let's have an honest debate about the size of the problem. A probe conducted by The Times revealed councils have shelled out close to £7 billion in contributions to these pensions in the past year. And the average household is forking out over £230 annually towards the pension scheme via their council tax bills. It's already been estimated that the UK is grappling with an eye-watering pensions bill of £4.9 trillion, landing at a hefty £173,000 per household. Meanwhile, taxpayers have been left to foot a mammoth £208 billion bill over the last decade due to employees' and employers' contributions falling short of the sums paid to pensioners. A spokesman from the Local Government Association told the outlet, "The local government pension scheme is the most robust public sector pension scheme. Compared with other major public sector pension schemes, the employer contribution rates are also generally much lower." A government spokesperson added, "Public sector pensions are an important part of the remuneration package for hardworking public sector workers and strike the right balance between rewarding them and being fair to the taxpayer." Public sector pensions are retirement benefits promised to employees working in government roles, including teachers, healthcare workers, police officers, and civil servants. Unlike many private sector pensions, which are typically funded through investments that grow over time, public sector pensions in the UK operate on a pay-as-you-go basis. This means the contributions of current workers, alongside taxpayer money, are used to pay pensions to current retirees. Farage's characterization of the system as a Ponzi scheme draws from this structure, likening it to a fraudulent financial setup where returns to early investors are paid from the contributions of new investors rather than genuine profit or growth. While the term is provocative, it underscores the concern that the system relies on continuous inflows of funds to remain viable. Farage's critique of the public sector pension system is multifaceted. His arguments can be summarized under the following points. 1. Unsustainability of the current model. Farage argues that the reliance on taxpayer funding makes the system unsustainable, particularly as demographic shifts lead to an aging population. With more retirees drawing pensions and fewer workers contributing, the system faces increasing financial strain. Farage claims this creates a demographic time bomb where the burden on taxpayers becomes unmanageable. 2. Inequity between public and private sectors. One of Farage's main contentions is the disparity between public and private sector pensions. Public sector employees often enjoy defined benefit pensions, which guarantee a specific income in retirement based on their salary and years of service. In contrast, most private sector workers rely on defined contribution pensions, which depend on investment returns and can be significantly less predictable. Farage has labeled this disparity as fundamentally unfair, especially since taxpayers, many of whom lack generous pensions themselves, fund public sector PE. Farage emphasizes the growing cost of maintaining public sector pensions. According to data from the Office for Budget Responsibility, OBR, public sector pensions already account for a significant portion of government spending. As life expectancy increases, retirees will draw pensions for longer periods, exacerbating the financial pressure on taxpayers. 4. The need for reform. Farage has called for immediate reforms to address what he perceives as an impending crisis. He has suggested moving toward funded pension schemes, where contributions are invested to grow over time, reducing reliance on current taxpayers. Additionally, he advocates for re-evaluating the generosity of public sector pensions to align them more closely with private sector norms. Counterarguments and the case for public sector pensions. While Farage's critique has gained traction among those concerned about fiscal responsibility, his arguments have also faced significant pushback. Opponents of his position raise several key points. 1. Fair compensation for public sector workers. Critics argue that public sector pensions are an essential part of the overall compensation package for government employees. Many public sector roles offer lower salaries than equivalent positions in the private sector. Generous pensions, therefore, serve as a trade-off, ensuring public servants are fairly compensated over their lifetimes. 2. Commitment to workers. Opponents stress the importance of honoring promises made to public sector workers. Many employees entered their roles with the understanding that they would receive a reliable pension upon retirement. Reneging on these commitments could undermine trust in the government and deter talented individuals from pursuing careers in public service. Public sector pensions also play a crucial role in supporting economic stability. Retirees with reliable incomes contribute to local economies and reduce the risk of poverty among older populations. Critics argue that Proponents of the current system point out that significant reforms have already been implemented to address sustainability concerns. For instance, many public sector pension schemes now require employees to contribute more toward their pensions and offer less generous payouts than in the past. These changes aim to strike a balance between fairness and fiscal responsibility. Broader implications of the debate. The controversy over public sector pensions reflects broader tensions in society, including debates about intergenerational equity, fiscal policy, and the role of government. Key issues include, younger generations often face higher taxes, reduced job security, and less generous pensions compared to older generations. Farage's critique taps into these frustrations, highlighting the need to address perceived imbalances between age groups. 2. Public versus private sector divide. The debate also underscores the growing divide between public and private sector workers. Addressing disparities in pension provision is essential to fostering a sense of fairness and cohesion in society. 3. Fiscal responsibility. As governments face mounting debt and economic challenges, the cost of public sector pensions will remain a contentious issue. Balancing the need for fiscal responsibility with the obligation to support retirees is a complex challenge that policymakers must navigate carefully. 4. Potential pathways for reform. While Farage's proposals for reform may be polarizing, they highlight the need for a broader conversation about the future of pensions. Potential solutions include increasing retirement ages, transitioning to funded pension schemes, and exploring hybrid models that combine elements of public and private pensions. Nigel Farage's characterization of public sector pensions as a Ponzi scheme has reignited a vital debate about the sustainability and fairness of the current system. While his critiques resonate with many taxpayers and private sector workers,